Good evening. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
No.
Not at all? Good. All right, so why don't we, about a minute before 6:20. Oh, waterways, were we gonna,
Take them first.
first, from the waterways? Good evening.
Good evening. So, David Sinkowski and David Friedman, and also in the audience, we have Craig Rosenquist from the Waterways Committee.
Oh, great.
So, first and foremost, thanks for hearing from us. I started to reach out to Frank probably back in the May timeframe about the Conservation Park, and wondering if there's any area where the Waterways might collaborate with this committee. The ramp area, as near as I can tell, has never been updated or had any work done to it. We had some people attend one of our waterways meetings and asked if it'd be possible to have maybe a finger dock there, some kind of a float that would allow kayakers to get on and off their boats easier. And then opened the discussion when we realized, well, it's not really anything to do with waterways, it belongs to this committee. So we wanted to reach out to see if there were, some short-term issues, just updating the parking lot. The painting is not visible anymore. Some of the signage was never adequate or has gone missing. We have some complaints about trailers being placed in areas where they don't belong. We happened to reach out, or had the Scituate police attend our meeting, and they said that they normally patrol that area. They have during the summer, they have a temporary service that does it on a daily basis, but they stopped ticketing because there was no signage. So, I think what we're asking is, in the short term, can we do some simple things like improve the signage and the painting of the parking lot? And then in longer term, there are other areas we might work together, and there is some interest from the waterways to contribute to an effort that you would manage through CPC. So with that, David, did I more or less cover it?
Clearly this is your park, and it's used by a lot of waterways users. So we get input from the public on how it could be improved. And so we're approaching you saying, we could help. We would think the funding should come from CPC, we would think. We don't think you guys have any funding to do it. So we just come with ideas, really. It needs to be improved. At the short-term things are lining the parking lot and putting up some signage, because it's a hugely used park, and we just want to improve it. So we want to start this dialogue between conservation and waterways to figure out, number one, what should get done, what the priority should be, and then, of course, who pays for it. So that's why we're here.
Okay. Do you mind if I jump into this? Sometimes we go around like in a hearing or something, but I've been spending some time talking about this. So you're right. And Jen brought it to my attention a year or two ago and showed me that park is clearly our most used park by walkers, dog walkers. It is the place that a lot of people tend to use. So it gets use all over, and it's been on our radar screen to do other types of things. The viewing platform that's there needs some attention. The trails are accessible, but there's a few areas that are muddy. There's folks that help maintain our trails, and they've been out there doing some markings and things like that. So from our perspective, that's the main emphasis for the trail, but it's also the access to the river. And I can tell you, when I first got on the commission, part of the reason I got on, because there was quite a flap about whether that would even be closed down altogether. There was funding from the state way back when the park was built, and there was issues of whether the park should include motorized boats or whether it should be canoes and kayaks, and we had all this sort of thing. And so the access to it did get somewhat restricted. We were also trying to protect the marsh because people weren't really watching out for that. And there's really no bottom to the ramp to speak of. It's difficult to maneuver. So we know that there's a lot of things, and we've also had a lot of requests for more space there. There's a potential for more parking. There was a question for a while of whether the dog exercise area might go in that property, and unfortunately it's down the street a ways because there's already a lot going on there. And there's been problems with parking. We've talked to the police about, they don't want people parking on the driftway, they don't want people parking in the golf course parking lot. So we know there's a number of things like that, and it might be good if maybe both of our groups got together, maybe even on an informal basis, not necessarily, lack of a quorum, and just sort of talk about what both of us want to see come out of there. And,
awesome.
And then our thoughts are probably the same as yours. We have some money to do our maintenance in there, but it's small amount of money compared to what we'd really need to do. We also have a pretty comprehensive plan that Horsley Witten did. It's probably now at least 10 years old, but talking about how to improve the park and different things to accommodate different needs. So we've got a plan for part of that. So I think we could dig that out and talk about it together, and I think it would be a positive for both
That'd be great.
our groups, and then maybe at the same time, we've recently chatted with you folks about the marine park, and trying to maybe work on that a little bit more. So I think maybe the solution might be to pick a few folks from both groups and then just have sort of an informal
That's great.
get together, if that makes sense.
Workshop type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Penny, you want to add to that?
No, I think it's a great idea, and both places need work, but it should be a collaborative and figure out who we can get funding from, and get them all up to snuff and hopefully keep them there once we get them.
Good.
I'm very interested in learning more about it.
Jen?
Yeah, I would echo pretty much all of Frank's sentiments. It is our most popular trail, at least in the region on the South Shore, based on a couple websites that track that stuff. So there's a lot of activity there and a lot of traffic, whether it's foot or boat.
I'd love to be a part of that. I know the trails have been kept up pretty good, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the side of the river. So I'd love to be involved.
Lisa?
I think they brought up some very good points, and it's worth moving forward with it.
Amy, anything you want to add to that? Okay.
So Frank, the timing, just let me add, the timing is, I think, important, and right now it's starting to get used less by the boaters, because it's the end of the boating season.
Right.
So you have conflicting uses. You have certainly the trails, and my wife used to always park there and walk the dogs that way. She's clueless about what's going on the other side. So
Sure.
short-term, literally signage, I think is important. If we can agree on, so that come next boating season, when boaters start to park there, that at least we have it laid out properly. It's relatively inexpensive to get it
Yeah.
Painted.
but we should have good signage there so that the,
And we should have funding for that. I mean, we have
That's short money.
a Driftway Park fund,
Yes.
so I don't
that's short money. right.
anticipate that, and I think you're right, getting on that, agreeing to it,
Yeah.
and getting it done before the spring, because anything large is CPC, and they've already taken their applications, I
Absolutely.
think.
They're
They're done, right,
closed,
exactly.
So that would,
yeah.
it's gonna take a little time to pull that
Through
together.
next summer, we can have this subcommittee meeting and talk about what the priorities are, and we can come to, by this time next year, we should have your application to CPC.
Well, there is a fall application too, it's a special town meeting. If we have a special town meeting,
For next year.
we do during the summer
Mm.
take applications in.
CPC.
Yes,
Right.
CPC, we have like three projects will be coming before special town meeting. So,
You're talking
yeah.
about for next fall, right?
This coming next fall, yeah. For this year, we have 3 that are already there. They're going to special town meeting. That closed in September.
Yeah.
So now we just closed taking applications for the spring.
Right.
So we have plenty of time to get something together for the next
Perfect.
fall,
Great.
2020.
Perfect.
And,
But short term, again.
Yeah, I think that would
by
be
next
a-
spring, we'd have to have that signage and the painting all set up.
Agreed.
That's our highest priority.
Yeah,
Can I
and,
just ask one question on that parking there, because this has always baffled me. Every so often, well, more than every so often, I'll see a trailer taking up 4 or 5 spots
Absolutely.
in the truck, and it's like, hello,
Hello.
I'm sorry, but,
The
you
cop
know.
should be able to, either tow or ticket.
Well,
like
The
that.
police will say that they'll ticket if they do that, but there has to be a sign telling you can't do that. And then right now, there's no
No,
sign.
exactly, no, I understand that, the police cannot enforce unless it's posted. But, that has always been one thing that bothers me.
And then we have to
greatly.
talk about, and I think the rules are set, we haven't seen them, and maybe you can dig them out somehow about how big a trailer can be in there, it's all single axle trailers, how big a boat can go down that ramp,
Yeah.
and those are things that we can talk about. I think the rules are set, we haven't seen them.
We were told there was a 12-foot boat, but if that's the case, it should be a sign that says 12-foot maximum. But
Oh,
that-
yeah,
if-
signage with the
if that's the
rules.
case, I don't know what it is, but
and I can tell you, I've seen some of that, some of it goes back to that early application to the state for funds to improve that, so it'll take a little searching, but I think we can get our hands.
Or redo the rules, I mean,
Yeah.
it's your auspices.
Yep, yep, no, I think it's,
just on a related note, the Minot kayak ramp, does that also fall under your jurisdiction?
it was built as a Boy Scout, it was Jen's brother, actually, that did that.
It's quite nice, and they have these finger docks to allow you to get on and
Oh,
off easily.
That's not part of the.
Oh, that's
kayak
not?
ramp. No, that's
Okay.
private. The kayak ramp is just the sign and then the cement blocks going in.
Okay, so the public has just put their stuff on this town land? It's
Are
going-
they two separate
There are
places?
2 separate things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, I mean, any of that, we should certainly take a look at and see if we can improve that for everybody. Sounds good. Why don't we, we'll take it up a little bit later. We'll see if we get a couple of guys, people, folks, gals, to
And it's us too.
work with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very good.
sounds good.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you very much. Okay, 86 Humrock Beach Road. Good evening. So you want to just... Yeah. Well, start out with who's here and then go from there.
Heidi Condon from HC Design. We are the residential design for the new garage, which we have revised for the board, and for the house addition.
Attorney Robert Galvin, I represent Peter and Anne Marie Huey, and I've been representing the Hueys since 2009 on their property at 86 Hemlock Beach Avenue, and other members of the Huey family when there was an issue involving Brunswick Avenue extension. Bob Crawford.
Bob's going to make it clear as a bell for us, right, Bob?
Try, I can't get it all on here.
Okay.
Focus it is.
So, since our last meeting, I believe you now are aware that we filed our zoning board of appeals application. We've submitted a revised site plan dated 10/3/19. That's Mr. Crawford's plan, which he can go through for you. We've submitted a revised garage plan and made some notes on the house plan. We've also submitted updated structural plans from Rivermore. So, Oh, and yeah, the commission asked for a summary of the construction process, and we've given a written narrative that explains the construction process that we believe would probably be a potential condition of approval. I have had an opportunity to review the correspondence that has come in since that, principally from some abutters, and I'll make it really simple. I don't see a lot of objections to the particular project. I see a lot of talk about Brunswick extension, and as I indicated before, and I don't want to repeat myself, these matters were all litigated back in 2009. I provided Ms. Walkie with copies of all of the documents that I was able to retrieve from my files, including the decisions from the Superior Court and from the Department of Environmental Protection and from the Appeals Court. The issues that I see raised in the letters are all issues that were actually litigated and resolved against the abutters' positions. We believe the commission should not attempt to go back and look at these issues. They're extraneous to the issue here. The only other issue I wanted to mention is there's been some allegation that the Hughes have done something wrong in the small portion of Brunswick extension that extends between his house and the abutters' house. We have a Conservation Commission certificate of compliance from 2010 that was issued in response to a request by Mr. Kalishis that certain vegetation be planted in that area. It was done in accordance with the directions that we were given, and we were given a complete certificate of compliance. There was a partial certificate of compliance in 2005, and the full certificate could not issue until the work was completed. So try not to go over the things that I went through the last time, but if you have any question about the process and procedure, I was the attorney that actually litigated the matter at the Superior Court and the Appeals Court, and with the DEP, which decision controls. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Okay, I think what I'd like to start out with is kind of following up to the hearing that we had before and the issues with the structure. We talked about piles versus piers, and there was an issue with the garage. And if we could sort of address those pieces as well as the that narrative would be helpful. And let's kind of get to that first and see where we go. Okay.
Go right ahead.
Do you want me to put these drawings on the board?
Sure.
Would that be helpful? If I can just. So you all should have revised drawings of the garage, which now is on driven piers.
I don't do it at home.
So
That's all
so
right.
everyone can see it. So it's 23 feet by 22. We're holding the existing two sides of the garage that's currently there. It will now be on grade, dry laid pavers, and there is no slab. We're removing the slab on grade that's there now. And we're installing, the round circles are the wooden ribbon piles. So anything that's new construction on this site will be deep-driven wooden piles with no footings. The only place that we're requesting concrete piers or we need additional foundation work under the existing house, because there's no way we can get a ribbon pile under the house. So you should all have these. The beauty now is that we're eliminating the slab on grade. We literally have 10 pilings, so 10 square feet that are driven in.
How high will the garage be off the front?
The cars will be on grade. And
Yeah,
then-
we'll discuss that.
Parked on the road.
Yes, cars will be on grade. And then the garage, you can see here, we're going up 3 foot 3 inches will be breakaway panels. So we'll have smart fence and breakaway
Oh,
panels.
okay.
So there's
Okay.
not a solid wall
No,
until 3 foot 3 high.
okay.
So the beauty is if there is a terrible storm, the water can go through the garage and back out. If the actual garage, except for the piers, will not stop the water. And so we reviewed this in detail last week with both Bob Vogel and Neil Duggan, and they were both happy with the compliance of using the smart fence and the breakaway boards. So that addresses kind of the garage. Does anyone have any questions on that proposed structure?
Okay?
No, that was my question. I got a little confused.
Well, when we went out to we had a site visit, and we went out to the site, we were looking at the plan, and it was unclear just how that would be supported and would function. And so we brought that to your attention and resulted in the change in.
So Rivermore met also with the building inspectors, and they were
Right.
very happy.
And that was our concern, and we did discuss it as well, to be sure that this was compliant, or if they felt it was compliant. So I think they've done a good job in responding to that, but anybody has any?
Nope, I can follow the plan. Nope.
Jen?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Lisa?
All set.
Amy, you want to add anything on the garage aspect?
No.
And then, Heidi, there was a change on the pilings for the house.
Yes. So where we've got the new deck in the rear, that will be on pilings, and I believe that that's more clear on your structural drawing. And so it's an independent structure. You can also see it on Bob's drawing, if that's easier to see. So you can see at the top of his drawing, the solid dots are the piers that are holding up this deck, and it's a completely independent structure from the existing house and covered porch. So again, in the event that there's a terrible storm, it will wash out that deck and it won't affect the house because they're not connected. So it's a completely independent structure.
But you're leaving the space between the seawall and the deck?
Yes. Yeah, so there's space in between. We're not using the seawall for support or anything.
Yeah, no.
It's completely
I just wanted to
independent.
be sure,
Yeah.
and plus, you know, you have to keep it clear, you can get in there.
Yes, yeah. So again, it's improving what's there. What's there now is sitting on
Yes, it
the
is.
sand.
Yeah.
So we're raising it. Again, water can just go completely under it and the house and the garage.
There?
No question.
Nope.
Better.
Sure, Lisa? You're good with those changes as well?
Yeah, that's what we were asking for.
Okay. All right, and then,
Do you want us to go over that
sure.
process? Do you want to go over
Just-
that?
So you all should have the diagram that Penny has out. And we colored it and identified the numbers that would correlate with our list. So if you'd like, I can just walk through it. So one, for Bob's plan, we're providing the silt fencing on the north and south of the property. So they should be identified on your plan. Two, we're also providing caution tape on the existing concrete seawall to just warn passerby for this construction site. Three, we'll provide caution tape on the sandy vegetated areas because we don't want any construction going in that area, any materials or people walking in that area. Well, on the Huey's property.
Yeah.
What's on the property.
Yeah.
We're going to flag the existing septic system, which you can see is clearly identified on the site plan. And we've reviewed the project with the Board of Health, and they're happy that we're not getting over the line of it. So we're going to flag that, and we're going to protect it so construction vehicles don't go on top of it. We're going to cover the septic system with plywood to actually protect it during construction. 5, we're going to demolish the existing garage, which is a wooden structure, but our proposal is to maintain the concrete slab and use it to put our construction materials so that it's easy to clean up and that we don't damage any more sand.
Okay, and then remove it.
And then we'll remove it. So we figured it'd be much easier to contain and protect the building materials on that slab. And we'll make it very clear to our builder, who we have not chosen yet, that's where they have to locate materials.
That's like a work area.
Exactly.
And
And
when
it
the
limits the work
project is
area.
done,
It's gone.
when the house stuff is all's done, then you remove the slab
Yes.
and build the garage.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Mrs. Huey Senior has property across the way, and we're gonna use that for the construction. So we're really trying to get as much of the equipment and materials away from the water while we build. Number 6, we will be able to establish a 10-foot wide travel access between the 2 Huey properties, which is right here. So again, we're not using that passageway, we're not using any public property, we're using Huey property to go back and forth on the site. We will make it very clear that any debris will be removed from the site, as well as excess sand, soil, and debris that's generated during construction. I mean, it's only driven piers, but we don't want to change the topography.
Well,
Does that
we don't
make
want
sense?
the sand removed from the area.
Where would you like us to disperse it? We just weren't sure where would you
On the
like
beach.
it?
What sand would they?
Well, we were just not sure if there would be sand, once the piles are driven, will there be excess sand? Or is it
Not
nominal?
really that much.
Oh, then we don't.
It'll be minimal to spread out.
Then
Yeah, you can't remove.
We were just worried if we
Yes.
made a pile, but if we're not making a pile, that's not an issue.
To be honest.
No, they just
Mom,
pound them in.
yeah.
They
It
just drive them
drives it in.
vertically, yeah.
Then X that one. Any dumpsters or trash bins, we'll make sure are covered. They're going to be stored on the concrete slab, and we'll request that they be emptied, removed immediately upon being filled. Construction materials will be covered to prevent wind dispersal. And once we have a general contractor, we'll have them have this in writing at the site, and that he's responsible to enforce our general conditions, the specifications, the specs from Rivermore Engineering, as well as the order of conditions. So we'll make sure all of those documents are on the site. And then upon completion, we'll provide the native plantings, which Bob has shown on the plan. So those were the items that we just wanted to make very clear, not only to the board, but to the contractor and the workmen who will be at the job site.
I think all my questions were answered that we had when we were down there. Doug?
No, I appreciate how the completeness of the, yeah, it's good for us.
If they're gonna use that 10-foot strip, which I assume is to get the pile driver in
Exactly.
and that sort of thing, I'm just wondering if it makes sense to put erosion control and that sort of thing
Sure.
on the far side of that as opposed to up against the house. I mean, all the equipment's gonna be back and forth on that.
Sure.
So maybe just some simple revision to show that, and as long as you're in agreement, it sounds like it's all family property.
Yeah.
Just move all that stuff 10 or 12 feet, whatever you have to that north
Do
side.
you want that to be a silt fence as well, that's stripped with the stakes?
Whatever you're putting for erosion control. The caution tape, just, it's a tough spot, the wind and all that sort of thing. I mean, good luck in terms of keeping that
We just
maintained.
wanted to identify that it was a construction site from the beach, that was the goal.
I guess if it's safe or whatever, but I just think there's some stuff in here that's gonna be difficult to totally maintain, to be realistic. If you can keep the radio off and people from smoking in different areas, you'll be doing a pretty good job. But it's good to have all these pieces here
We're trying to make them aware of the sensitive nature of the location.
and that the contractor is fully versed in the order conditions. That always seems to be sort of a hang-up that when so.
We'll make sure it's on site.
And that somebody in charge needs it.
Yeah.
That's the whole secret.
Well, our goal is to have a
Sometimes
team.
they take it, but they don't need it.
Exactly. Our goal with the Hueys is to have a team meeting once we have a contractor on board,
Okay.
not only with myself and Rivermore, and then we'll go through all of these documents.
One of our orders will be that you have a pre-construction with A&E or
Right.
something, so
That makes sense.
make sure we're all tied together. Okay. Anybody else?
No, it's much better.
Okay.
I just had a couple of things. All right, so one is, so we did just receive these plans on Friday. So, I'm not going to recommend that we would close tonight, just so that we have adequate time to review plans. A little bit more past the deadline. And then just a question about how you're gonna access the piles on the south side. So
Well,
there's
we'll
the
start-
dune
so
that's
we'll-
in the passageway, there's the house, and so how are you gonna get the machine in there?
Well, he's gonna come down here and then go across Huey property.
In the front.
We're not going, so we'll always be accessing with the pile driver along here going into the site.
Right, but some of those, though, it looks like the house is in the way. So how are you gonna get in?
On these guys?
Yes. Yep.
Those are the concrete ones, though, right?
No, those are all wooden piles.
Those are wooden piles. We've shown the plan to Armstrong, and he didn't have a problem with
He
how
never has a problem.
Okay, just would be concerned that that vegetated dune would get damaged in the process, you know what I mean? But, okay, so that was just one comment. And then as far as you're not adding fill to the property, you're changing the grades or the elevations, it wasn't shown to work, okay. And we had asked for the utilities to be shown on the updated site plan, we didn't add those, correct?
Yeah, we have a sewer, the water connection coming off the existing water that services the house, going to the garage. And there's an existing gas line that comes in here also, and the gas connection for the garage will be provided right alongside the water.
Okay, thank you. And then, lastly, I think we did observe, like an astroturf carpet, on the property that we had comments about, and it's not ideal, I would say.
it's
So-
been removed.
Okay,
Thank you.
and that area is vegetated beneath it?
Well, it wouldn't be yet.
Oh, well, okay.
Sand, it was between the garage and the
Yeah.
house.
Okay. Okay, so we can deal with that under a condition as well. Okay, thank you.
Where does the, Heidi, where does the garage go up in this sequence?
Well, we'll
At the
work
end.
work backwards. We'll really work on the house, because we want to use that slab as our,
Yeah.
construction kind of. So once the house is done, that's when we plan to take the slab out and then build the garage.
Okay.
Excuse me, but that would mean that the garage itself would be removed early.
I'm taking the walls down.
That's what I mean, yes.
That will be part of the demo.
Then use that area for
Right,
staging.
right, that makes perfect sense, I got
Yeah,
that.
it just
Okay.
seems simpler.
Yeah.
All right.
Almost there.
So you guys,
Good so
so
far.
from the audience, anybody want to, go ahead.
Thank you, Frank. My name is Mike Hayes with Gorham, Irving, DeLisi, and Harris. I represent Jamie Ford and Mona Bone and his wife Mona, who live two doors down, around the corner. And I'll be brief. And my clients and others in the neighborhood certainly have issues. And I'll just state. I know Mr. Galvin quite well, and we discussed this after the first hearing. He was going to provide me with the information that he had on the prior litigation and all that. He chose either not to, or his clients directed him not to, because I have not seen that. However, I'm not going to go back into old gripes and complaints and litigation. However, I have 5 points I'd like to make. The first is the new plans and the zoning application that were filed yesterday. We obviously would request as well that this hearing not be closed to give us and our experts at Humphreys an opportunity to review the revised plans. However, I do think you have the right to reject this plan tonight under Mass General Law 131, Section 40. The applicant has filed zoning applications for special permits. The plan shows quite clearly that he is proposing new construction and increasing the nonconformity of the current structure by putting new construction within 2 feet of the setback. Scituate interprets Chapter 48, Section 10, and always has and continues to do so, that any new nonconformity needs a variance. So I would suggest to this commission that the proper permits have not been filed. My second point is in regards to the activity above the septic system. That is the subject matter of an existing condition that goes back to the original order of conditions and the final certificate of compliance that condition, specifically condition 50, which says that vegetation removed from the construction of the sewage disposal system shall be replaced in kind, with the exception of turf grass, which shall be replaced with indigenous species. New plantings at the site shall be indigenous to the dune environment. This condition shall outlast the order conditions on the certificate of compliance. I would suggest to you that you need to look at that because that continuing order has willfully violated for 9 years.
What was that order number, Mike?
Number 50.
And those were orders from,
The final certificate of compliance.
but the filing, that filing was when? I have your packet, but I just,
The original filing goes back to, excuse me, that. And that, 2001, August 1st, 2001, the original order of conditions was granted.
okay, thank you.
And the final certificate of compliance was issued and recorded in 2010.
Okay.
So again, I'm not interested in going back to old grudges and old problems. There's obviously a problem in this neighborhood. In fact, my clients have requested of the applicants just an opportunity to sit down and discuss concerns they have. And their concerns are the diversion of stormwater onto their property. But the applicant has no interest in discussing anything that could alleviate the concerns of my clients and others. And so that my fourth point is stormwater control. And the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over flood control issues when a notice of intent is filed. And the general performance standards of the state stormwater regulations of FEMA require the applicant to show that there will be no adverse drainage to neighbors. And specifically, in Scituate's stormwater bylaw, it says in section 10.3, which I provided a copy with, is that it is the burden of the applicant to going forward with credible evidence from a competent source in support of all matters asserted by the applicant in accordance with his or her burden of proof, and that the applicant shall have the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that the proposed work as described in the notice of intent presented at the wetlands hearings will protect the interests of the bylaw. Failure to meet this burden shall be cause for the commission to issue a denial on the proposed work or any activity proposed. And the protected interest of the bylaws, pursuant to our wetlands bylaw, is to include flood control and stormwater prevention, storm damage prevention. And it is our opinion that the plans presented, especially the addition to within 2.12 feet of the side setback, it's an 8-foot setback requirement, needs to be explained as to how that would not affect stormwater damage, drainage damage. I will say, before I turn it over to Stan Humphries, who has a brief presentation, is that, again, while not wishing to relitigate 11-year-old issues, my clients have written a letter. The neighbors know that the applicant has continually done work on that dune since the last order of conditions in 2010, without any consultation with the commission, without filing any RDAs or notice of intents. And it will be my client's intention at some point after the conclusion of this hearing, or at any time of their choosing, frankly, to file a notice of intent to prevent and remove the man-made dune that is in violation of the law, which requires access over that parking lot. And so with that, I just ask Stan to make his comments.
Okay.
Good evening. Stan Humphries, coastal geologist with ECR. Yeah, the neighbors had asked me to evaluate in specific the area of Brunswick extension, both on the east and the west side of the property, and evaluate what adverse effects may or may not be occurring. I reviewed a lot of photos, which I believe have been provided by the neighbors to the commission. My primary focus is on the east side, closest to the seawall, adjacent to the existing home. And if I could draw the attention of the commission to the plan that you have on the right-hand side of the Brunswick Avenue section. Since 2004, and I have yet to see if this has been changed on the more recent plans, all that's been shown is what's here in green. There's sort of two contours.
Stan, you know what, there's a bunch of people in here, maybe
Sure.
just bring that over and you can hang it on one of the clips there if you don't mind. Sure.
And now being closer to the plan, I can see that there is another contour that's been drawn out here, but I haven't checked to see what the elevation is. Clearly from other photos that I've seen, this was all level area and shown in yellow. I looked at about 11 different images from Google Earth and chose the clearest ones to evaluate. And activities in that yellow area started around 2007, and about by 2013 they were completed. Those two Google Earth photos are shown there. And essentially, the area of some vegetation, maybe some elevation, had doubled out to the wall. And then down at the other extension, part of the extension, the entrance to that road has closed by twice as much. So I've tried to indicate some distances that are approximate, both with respect to the development of that dune during that period, as well as the constriction of the pathway. The description provided me, the photos, looking at this, understanding that the barrels have been used. There are activities shown that give me the impression that this was man-made. I was able to find some boulders, pieces of concrete, and mixed material that I don't believe was placed there naturally by storm. When Mr. Hayes brought up the issue of the regulations and the Control Commission has, very specifically under the performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage that the state does not have, only this body has. The general performance standard B1, any activity shall not have an adverse effect on increasing the elevation or velocity of floodwaters or by increasing flows due to change in drainage or flowage characteristics, i.e. the change in direction on the site, adjacent properties, or any public-private way. When water comes into this area from storm overwash, it's unable to go north, it's just going to go south. So this structure adjacent and any further structures to the south along the wall. Flows move then directly towards that back side of Brunswick Ave, and I don't have any reason to doubt that water, as explained to me by the neighbors, then moves to the south along the way and back or between the houses. As Mike also said, we don't come here to object to this project specifically or have any grounds at this point from what we've seen for enforcement orders. Certainly rights of appeal are available, but I've taken more of a softer approach to this assessment and what could be done. I don't think there needs to be any removal of the dune. I think regrading that dune back to a flat area to release the effects of that hummock that's along there would maintain the volume of the dune. I believe also if it's done during the dormant part of the year, the vegetation can come back in the spring. So we're not asking for clearance of all vegetation to restore it back to its pre-2007 condition. Other than that, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything to this at this time? So,
Could I respond briefly? Just
Sure.
a couple of points to Mr. Haysman.
yeah, what I'd like to do, maybe do that, and then, given this information, maybe we'll run back through the commission members and Amy. Okay?
Okay, I'll be very brief. First of all,
That's what Mike said.
he was brief. I thought he was pretty brief.
A lawyer might say.
In any event, obviously the commission can't use zoning reasons to deny a plan. Okay, so hopefully you take that into consideration. Attorney Hayes has suggested that the zoning bylaw doesn't authorize this type of extension of the home into the side setback. If Mike probably is not aware of the Bellata versus Zoning Board of Brookline case, but Brookline took the same position that their bylaw has the same type of bylaw that Scituate does, and Brookline found out the hard way that they're not allowed to demand a variance. When a structure is non-conforming, it sits in its setback, the law can only be interpreted to require a special permit. That's the 2019 case of Bellata versus Zoning Board of Brookline. I'll leave zoning alone now. With respect to the diversion of stormwater, as we indicated to you, the only way we could get a certificate of compliance is to do the work that we've done. My clients absolutely deny that they've altered this area in any way, shape, or form other than as the commission has directed or approved. Anything that's there now is as a result of the natural accumulation of sand. No one needs to be reminded of what happened in January and March of 2018 when we had storms kicking up rocks, stones, and everything under the sun, flooding this entire area, bringing sand off the beach and into that neighborhood. That's the only type of activity that's altered this area in the meantime. In terms of stormwater control, everything about this project improves the ability of stormwater that's overflowing the seawall to access where it was intended to flow. We're eliminating impervious surfaces, and there's no way, shape, or form that anything we're doing here will adversely affect any other property. I heard a lot more again about things that occurred prior to 2010, and I would suggest, as I did before, that that's already been determined, and I have the highest respect for Stan. Stan and I work together on other projects. We certainly disagree that anything that's been done is man-made, and my clients have firsthand knowledge of that, so it's absolutely not the case.
Mike, for a minute.
My comments will be better served in a different forum, so.
Okay. Penny, why don't you just, if you got any other questions after the other, and
On the project, I don't have any more questions on the project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Doug?
No, the project, no, I can appreciate that there's a lot of, I really hate to see neighborhoods crumble apart like this. Over some things that I think that probably shouldn't be exacerbated to this point. My question was going to be the suggestion, and this is my only hang-up, is the suggestion of whether or not additional work had been done here after the certificate of compliance was issued. And what I'm hearing is just two completely different views of that. So that's not, which is unfortunate, because then I would appreciate Mr. Humphreys actually offering a solution, which would be a simple regrading of that. Whether or not the commission can order something like that as part of this project is doubtful to me, but because it's not on their property. If there was some way you could all get together and do something that was amicable to everybody, and I'm lecturing adults right now, so I'm going to stop doing that. But it's unfortunate that that is the case in such a wonderful area for people to be spending their time and living. But as far as the project itself, the technicality of the project, I don't have any other comments.
Okay, thank you. Jan?
Yeah, I guess my only question was perhaps more of a clarification of when Stan mentioned that he's kind of speaking on behalf of the neighbors, if that's truly the entire neighborhood that feels this way, or if it's just a subsection of the people that may be hired, just for understanding how much the neighbors, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. My name's Eileen Stevenson.
I'm going to just run through here, and then
Sure.
we'll get you. And I will say that we've gotten feedback, go through all the different comments that are coming before the commission. There's been positives and negatives on both sides. So glad to take some more from abutters, but we've gotten both. So
Right, which is why I just want to say I'm speaking for the neighbors. Are you speaking for the entire neighborhood, or?
No.
sounds like it's kind of divided.
Right, so just calling that out.
Depends on if you're adversely impacted by the stormwater.
Just again, we'll do this because we want to get person's name, address.
Mr. Snow, of course. Apologize.
Richard?
Not on the project itself. I appreciate what Doug had to say. I have to agree with him completely.
Lisa?
I agree with pretty much everything my fellow commissioners have said. I think it would have been really helpful to have a photo in 2010 when they get the COC, then there wouldn't be any question.
So we went around, and just if there's any comment from the audience, in addition, I guess this is a good time. Hopefully we can pull things together here fairly quickly. But go, ma'am.
Oh, sure. Eileen Stevenson, to answer your question, Jen Foley, there's exactly 12 abutters that abut that particular passageway, and as Mr. Huey has written, 8 are in favor of his project and are not adverse, having issues with this passageway. There's only 4, so when they use neighbors, I'm thinking they're using it, Mr. Hayes and Mr. Humphreys, very loosely, because they're directing it to the 4 individuals right here. Unfortunately, Mr. Aber I agree with you. It is a beautiful location, and for some people, they do like to have negativity and have ruined a beautiful area that I grew up in. And it's very tragic. But that being said, you know, there will be people like that in life, and we just need to continue on. I do have pictures of, unfortunately, I am the only individual on that passageway that lives there year-round and have for over 30 years. And I have pictures with me right now showing the storm hitting that, above that dune and bringing in all the rocks, et cetera, that Mr. Humphreys is saying that there were, I think there's been incorrect information as saying there's been trucks, there's been, I think, whatever else they have indicated that has been brought in. I have the pictures actually of the March 1st, 2018 storm. I sat there and videotaped it, and the water coming over that between Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Huey's home and hitting that and bringing in all those rocks and causing that material. That dune has been there, and as we said, we've litigated it already. It has been there well over 50 years. It has never been flat. And it's been ebbed and flowed due to storms. No one has brought anything in. I know this is quite comical to all of you, but I live there and I know that. And I do have the pictures with me right now. But again, that's some of the information. In regards to Mr. Ford indicating that his home is being indirectly or negatively directed by this dune, I know as a math teacher he'd understand the topography of that. Right there at his northeast corner, which has been certified by engineers, it's 14.10. At his southeast corner of his property, it's 12.10. It doesn't matter how wide that passageway is. That water is going to come over that wall and take a bang of left. It doesn't even come near the passageway because you've got 14, 10, 12, water runs downhill. Okay? So if Mr. Ford has a problem, he needs to lift his house like the rest of us on this street. But he, again, has joined forces with individuals that like to direct negativity towards this passageway, who don't even abut this passageway, and try to take down this dune, and have focused their entire lives. Unfortunately, one would hope it would be directed more toward more positive things, but this is what they've chosen. That's all I have to say. I mean, after living with the past 10 years of this craziness, it's really tragic. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I do have all the pictures from all the storms. If Mr.
You can give those pictures to
Sure.
to our agent if you like. Once you give them to us, they're part of our.
That's fine. Yep. And I have the video.
Sure. James Ford, 31 Hawthorne Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've already submitted photos that demonstrate that human hands were putting it there. There were actually humans in the photos that we submitted. Mr. Humphreys has clearly stated that he believes, in his expert opinion, that human hands put it there. The grass, a significant amount of the grass that is on the easterly side of Humrock Beach Road in said passageway is non-indigenous grass. It's the type of blue beach grass that you buy at Kennedy's. And subsequently, on the westerly side of Humrock Beach Road, we submitted photos that showed approximately 500 cubic feet of sand that was put there by man to close that passageway so that water cannot flow across Humrock Beach Road down the passageway. Our only concern is to open up the passageway for stormwater flow, and we believe that we have all the evidence to suggest that it's man-made, in addition to things that are currently placed there to this day, such as 4x4s and sections of telephone pole that are in the passageway, not on the Huey property, planters that are placed in the passageway to collect debris that weren't put there by nature, that were put there by human hands. And further down the passageway, there's non-indigenous grass that's been planted there as well. It just has everything to do with creating a situation where the stormwater can flow properly down that passageway as it did. And I disagree that it's been like that for the past 50 years, and it was never flat. It was flat, certainly prior to the '91 storm, and even after that, during his property, when it was being done the first time in 2004, the photos showed that it was flat. and there was no grass there. Further photos showed in subsequent years that the first bushes were planted there, and then they didn't survive, and something else was planted there. So activity continues to be done. I have photos that I submitted that were as recent as the last year, where it showed the rake marks where dirt and debris was raked up. So, I mean, lastly, when it comes to the partial order of compliance, prior to the final order of compliance that was issued, there was a statement to say that everything was completed except grass to be planted 1 feet on center on the easterly side of the home and over the septic sewage system. And to date, there is grass in neither one of those locations, nor is it ever in either of those locations. As the applicant has just said, they just pulled up their turf grass over their septic tank today or yesterday, and on the easterly side of the home where the partial order of compliance said they had to plant 1 feet on center, there's no grass at all, and there was never grass planted there. And now he wants to build a deck over that entire area when actually it should be natural beach grass as per that partial order of compliance order. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Mike, I just want to get a couple of things real quick, and then we should move on. You mentioned the stormwater piece, which is purview for the Conservation Commission. You know, if it comes before the commission, we deal with stormwater. If it goes before the planning board without the Conservation Commission, they deal with stormwater. But typically, there's a trigger that requires that to happen, and I just wonder, do we think that this has met that? There's a trigger that has to, you know, certain dimensional pieces that have to be built or extensions that have to be built, and I'm not seeing that it triggers that, but I could be wrong.
Well, I think that specifically the proposed addition, and Bob and I can debate the 2019 case at a different time.
Well, I don't want to do that, but I was hoping to, I just want to deal with Scituate stormwater.
Bringing a solid structure into, or adding a solid structure can certainly change water flow and drainage as storm runoff inevitably will bounce off that structure.
Right. I just, again, trying to follow our bylaw with regard to that and the triggers that make that come into compliance. I'm just not sure that they're doing enough. There's already existing structures and roof structures.
And I think the commission has the right to ask the applicant through expert testimony to show that the proposed structures that he will be adding to and building during storm events will not significantly change drainage practice to the detriment of their neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Just, can I say something very quickly? I'm Mona Bonin, 31 Hawthorne Street, and I just want to address one comment that Eileen Huey Stevenson made, that of course we know the whole ground is pitched our way because she do have some common sense, being a math teacher or teacher in town, but also by the water not being able to flow down Brunswick Street extension because of the man-made material that's placed there, more of it is getting funneled our way. So we're getting not just what's coming over the wall, but what's not able to go down Brunswick Street extension.
I understand. I get.
So I just wanted to point out that because she was talking about the elevation.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks on that. So I think everybody's had a chance to vet their pieces here.
One thing that bothers me is Doug Shellington, 37 Hawthorne Street. And I want to pick up on Jen's comment. Maybe I misunderstood you, but Stan Humphreys is not a hired gun. He's a very reputable man. He didn't get paid. Matter of fact, he hasn't taken a nickel from us. He didn't get paid to come in, and I hope I didn't misunderstand. I misunderstood you.
You did.
He didn't come in to give us an answer that we wanted to hear, and I wanted to clear that up. Second point is what we don't understand.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you absolutely did misunderstand me.
I'm glad.
And, well, I feel like it was pretty clear when I said I want to understand what the neighbors means. I didn't at all insinuate
then I apologize.
hired a gun.
The second and last point, and this is going to be very brief, what we don't understand, and nobody's asked the question, why wouldn't the applicant, in favor of going ahead to do the project, be okay with us filing an NOI and clear the road, which we all have substantiated that it's been man-made dune? I mean, why is it so important that these materials that were put there remain there? That's a question that I think should be asked to the applicant.
Okay. I really don't want to keep this going.
Could, just briefly, if you, commission looks back in its record, and I can provide you the letter, Mr. Humphreys is not the only coastal geologist that's opined on this. Carlos Pena attended commission meetings and gave a complete history of the entire dune.
Okay.
And I have the letter from the commission to Peter Smith, who was caught bulldozing that dune and directed to stop.
Okay.
This is when they were trying to open it up. The only other thing is I have 2 photographs that I'll give to Ms. Walkie that shows that the water is actually running down from further north, runs down Humrock Beach Boulevard or Road and heads towards this property. Only a small portion of the water that's coming in, what's left of the gap there, is actually causing this flooding. It's coming from further north and heading down. So it's not this project, it's everything else north of it, which is principally causing the issue. So
If we can add those to that. So
May I make a 10-second statement, Frank?
really, I think we've heard.
No.
Can we, here's what I'd like to do. I think we've gotten enough of all this. The commission can do this. I think people have given their thoughts on it.
Well, my only objection or point is Bob's had 3 chances to speak and I haven't.
All right, Mike, go ahead, but
My only point is, as I said in the beginning, and I think is being lost by the applicant and his counsel, is that my client's concern is not what happened 19 years ago, 15 years ago. It's what's happened since the certificate of compliance in 2010, and that no oversight by this commission has been sought by the applicant since that time.
okay, thank you. So, I guess first, I appreciate that everybody here has been pretty respectful, because we've had some hearings that aren't that way. I appreciate that both applicant and the concerned folks got gentlemen to represent them, and we appreciate that. And that we try to keep this meetings with everybody presenting their pieces, which is now what the commission has all that information to do. I'd like to close this, but I think Amy's point that we just got some of this information, we technically have to leave this for one more meeting. We'll certainly take this information and then we'll have to continue the meeting to one more time. But Doug's sentiment about trying to figure all this sort of stuff out. I mean, you've obviously spent money and time to put all these things together. We've gotten directives by the state to encourage beach nourishment, beach stabilization. At the same time, people come before the commission trying to protect their property, and the commission has to look at that and make sure that people don't adversely affect other people's property when they do that work. And I get that neighbors would have concern with some of this work. If someone's building up around their house, and we've had 2 or 3 hearings about this fairly recently where we've found that people have done that in an adverse way that's created undue hardship for folks next door. That's not the application that's in front of us tonight. What's in front of us is an application to add on to this house. Now, you have a piece of this beside the house that you feel that the buildup of that dune seems to be the thorn for everyone here, that somehow that's adversely affecting other folks in the neighborhood. And whether it's because they don't have adequate access to the beach or because it's diverting water further onto someone's property, the Ford's property, I guess, is the one. And I guess what I've seen happen in other locations is neighbors have gotten together, and actually both of them have created a better dune with some sort of path that affords access that everyone can use, whether the person is able to just walk over it on their own, or whether they need, dragging a baby carts or wagons or whatever, access with disabilities, that somehow that could be added to that. We've seen people build an additional dune at the end of that. I think Stan's proposed some of that stuff in other projects that have come before us. And I really wish that somehow folks could take the time and take a look at that. I think for not a lot of work and money, that a positive piece could come out of this instead of continuing to deal with this. That beach is if it's not improved, it's only going to degrade. So it would seem like it would be in everybody's interest to work towards building up that area, not trying to remove more of it. That would be my thing, and I think that's the way the state's going to look at it when you come in that. So rather than waste a whole lot of time and money trying to remove something that I don't think the state's going to go for, I really wish that folks would get together and say, how do we fortify this? How can we make this a better situation and at the same time afford the access that people want? I think would be in your best interest. But we've all had our opinions here tonight, so I think I'm hoping that someone can take a look at that and give us
one quick comment.
Go ahead. Your name, sir?
Mark Stevenson, 25 Hawthorne Street. You said for the neighbors to get together and try to work this out. Going back to before all this Michigan started, we tried. As a matter of fact, in this room, we sat down, one group and the other group. And we were willing to agree to anything they wanted to do, but they insisted on the passageway being 20 feet wide from the seawall all the way down to River Street.
Well, let's
with the sole purpose of being able to drive it up and down.
And that's not, yeah.
So we have tried and
I get
tried.
But I hope that over time, people have realized the folly to some of the things that have gone on there, and that today, knowing what we know now about all these different pieces.
Obviously it hasn't.
Well, those kind of things don't help though either. So you got a good person with Stan here looking at this, maybe somebody can take a look at it and say, let's see if we can figure out something a little bit better. And appreciate it. If you're going to discuss any more of it, take it way down the hall, because we got other hearings tonight. So we have a motion to continue.
I make a motion to continue.
Not to the 21st.
Oh,
So it'll be the 4th?
November 4th?
Why not?
Okay.
Why not,
November
Amy?
4th.
Because our agenda is full.
Yeah, I mean, we got like 10 hearings already.
3 weeks from.
I make a motion, we continue.
Oh, it's not to the 4th, it's the 6th.
I'm sorry. I must have.
4th is on the...
Okay, to November 6th, 86 Hammerock Beach Road at 6:20.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You guys will have been heard by ZBA by then.
Can I get anything for you?
When's our next meeting?
21st. No, the next meeting's the 21st.
And you can decide you can
The
do
next-
it
oh,
out
the next-
from there if you want to wait.
So we're meeting on a Wednesday?
Yeah, because of town meeting.
Showboat.
Town meeting's the 5th.
Why are we meeting on Monday?
I don't know that. First it's the one after. That's a Wednesday. I think.
Amy?
What?
On Monday the 4th.
It's a long story, but it's the 6th.
We're not going to keep doing this.
No, I know, it's because of the holidays, Frank. It's town meeting. It has to do with fall town meeting, yeah.
Yeah, that's the night before. We would have never gotten out of here. You could have too. You know that, Frank?
What's that?
Lisa and I were biting our tongue because we could have said so much and we would have been here all night.
Thank you.
That is a shame.
That went well.
97 Booth Hill Road. Is anybody here from 97 Booth Hill?
Yes, Jeff is.
Oh. You and I are gonna volunteer to have daily watch on it.
Hey, Stan,
Those neighbors are.
just everybody that's there, just ask them to take it as far, away down the hall.
Or outdoors. This is the mark.
Heidi, will you close that door? Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, it's
Jeff?
empty room.
That took care of the audience.
So much free space.
97 Booth Hill Road is septic repair. It was presented by Greg at the last meeting.
Yep.
There have not been any plan revisions. It was continued in order for, to get Board of Health review and approval. The Board of Health has reviewed it. They did not have any revisions they requested, but they do want the Board of Health to act on it. They have a meeting next week, and I know it's unusual, but they would like Conservation to act on it first.
Huh?
Well,
What?
You always wait for Board of Health.
Could close it with the condition that it gets Board of Health approval. We have done that in the past.
So we opened it last meeting, but we continued it right away, correct? Did we, I don't even remember
No, we
discussing.
heard-
No, we didn't continue it right away.
There's nowhere else for the septic to go, and we were waiting for the Board of
Right.
Health approval. That's what my mind said.
Right, and they haven't had their meeting yet, so it's still
Exactly.
pending at Board of
Can I
Health.
see that
We,
plan, Jeff?
we had no problem with the plan. We were just waiting for Board of Health.
Yeah.
It's just very small. It's about 5,000 square feet.
Right. Oh, that's right. I got it.
Yeah.
All right.
When's the Board of Health?
So what's the problem with closing?
Next week, so we're still.
No, we can close.
All right.
With the condition that pending Board of
Pending
Health.
Board of Health approval.
Vote to close, vote to issue on this.
Yeah. Okay, give me a motion.
I make a motion, we close
And issue.
and issue.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. 96 Humrock Beach.
Yeah, good, good.
Time waiver and plans.
Okay, and we have a letter notice,
Time for business.
Oh, I'm too sad.
It is so bad.
receive the structural plans for the
Is there a spiel on this one? This is a new one.
Oh,
isn't it?
shoot, I do, yeah. Do I have my,
What's
I
this
don't have a
for?
folder.
Where's your folder?
I think I have it.
Did you give it back to somebody?
What's 96 doing?
Yeah.
Doesn't say.
Amy,
That's why he's here.
I didn't get.
Now you're gonna find out because he's gonna read a spiel.
on October 8, 2019, at 6:25 PM, the Townhouse Situate Conservation Commission will act on a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 4 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700 Townhouse Situate Code bylaws regarding the application of Robert Engel to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling at location 96 Humrock Beach, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. For the record, Jeff Bassett, civil engineer with Morse Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Robert Engel. He owns the property at 96 Humrock Beach Road. We filed a notice of intent to raise and reconstruct the home on that property. The house was built in 1948. It's on a concrete foundation. This property to the east
Thank you.
is an oceanfront property. So the east beach is on the top of the page. This wall is located here. Water by the residential properties on either side. In addition to the single-family home on the property, there are also 2 sheds, a driveway, and they upgraded the septic system in 2001. We had the wetlands reviewed by Brad Holmes and Stan Humphreys of Environmental Consulting and Restoration. There are no vegetated wetlands on the property. The beach side of the seawall is a coastal beach, and then the other side is a coastal dune. All of Humrock is actually a coastal dune. The property is also in land subject to coastal storm flowage, being in the FEMA zone BE and AE. The proposed work will be to demolish the home, build a new house that will be constructed on wooden piles. I will note that a small portion of the deck on the northerly side is located in an area that's currently vegetated with grass. As The deck will be elevated there and up on piles, but we are providing mitigation in order to vegetate an otherwise unvegetated area here between the seawall and the house. That's the area hatched in green, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio. And the house will be elevated in accordance with the building code for construction within the floodplain. The lowest horizontal structural member will be 2 feet above the base flood elevation. We've designed the project as a net improvement with respect to the Wetlands Protection Act and the local regulations. Included in the submittal is a narrative prepared by Stan Humphreys. To summarize, the vegetated area that will be altered by shade will be replicated at a ratio of 2-to-1. We're removing the existing house, which is on a concrete foundation, and replacing it with the wood piles that occupy only 34 square feet of area. And the house will be elevated to minimize any potential future risk for damage. Thank you.
Pay?
No. I like it. Get rid of the foundation, get it up, something new.
Doug?
Where does one get dune grass to plant?
Actually, there are nurseries for that. There are special nurseries for it.
Where do you get dune grass, Stan?
Most of it actually comes from New Jersey.
Yeah.
There's a good farm on Cape Cod, I think in Orleans.
Yeah, you can only get it certain times of the year.
Yeah, you have to get early spring,
Yeah.
It's technically American beach grass.
technically.
Are you in the market?
No, I just never miss an opportunity to learn something, Jen.
Yeah. I don't doubt that.
Jen?
Just
No, I'm
found
good,
where-
thank you.
Rich?
The overall size of the house, same as it is now?
No, it is larger.
It's not, yeah.
The footprint of the concrete foundation now is about 11,000 square feet, and the new footprint of the house is about 1,900 square feet. But it's
Including the deck.
elevated up above.
I understand. And no connection at all with the wall, correct?
No, there is a connection. From the deck, there's this connection to the seawall.
What's the deck comprised of?
What?
What is the deck made of?
Oh, wood.
And is it removable or not?
Not removable. Although it could be, I suppose.
That, I think, would be a great idea.
Yeah. We actually added that later in the design. We originally thought there would be steps down, and then you'd have to walk up onto the seawall. And we thought that since we were vegetating that area, why not do a walkway and keep it.
I would only add, there are a number of people in Humrock that have removable walkways going over the wall for the winter, because then the water that does come over the wall, and it will, doesn't just go over the deck and wash it out frequently. That's what used to happen, so my own personal opinion. What?
They
Yeah.
were doing that a lot after
Yes.
people down there.
Yes.
To do the removable decks.
Yeah.
They
Can
should-
frequently be on hinges, and just flip over. Some people do it that way. Some people literally take it out.
Yeah, I've seen panels before.
Right.
Exactly.
But again, that's just my opinion. We haven't voted on it or anything, but I think that would be a great help.
Yeah, I think that would be fine if you wanted to make that a condition, that the walkway is removable for the winter.
I'm done.
Lisa?
I agree with the removable walkway. I've seen the results of the waves. It just doesn't go on the deck, it slams into the house too.
Yeah.
Amy?
Does this have Board of Health approval?
No, they're reusing the septic that was put in 2001. So it doesn't require board approval.
Okay, that's good. I believe it has a DEP file number. We did just receive the structural plans tonight, which we definitely want to make sure that we've got the structural plans for these projects before we close. And it's a progress set, so what does that mean?
It's just not the final set for the building permit application.
So what would change?
Not the piles. Interior electrical, plumbing.
But it's definitely going up on free flow wood tiles.
Yes.
Because this is, correct, this is a barrier beach, coastal dune. Yeah, okay.
It might be good, Amy, that we put condition that says driven wood piles,
Yeah, I have that written down, yeah.
because I don't see that kind of note on the plan.
Yeah, it is.
Is it on the plan?
I see.
I was looking into it too, and I thought I saw it.
Unless it's a note in the,
Yeah, constructed on piles,
On the plan.
on the plan.
Wood
It doesn't
piles.
have the word wood, you're correct.
driven wood piles. Have you got, like siltation or erosion control up around that one, Jeff?
We don't. I don't really, I mean, we could put it along the property line, kind of.
Yeah, you need it. You need it, it has to be staked.
It's sand.
Um,
I
Yeah, but-
don't see really any potential for erosion here, but just to define the work area. we could-
Or even maybe a fence would be the right thing.
Yeah.
Something to define the work.
Sure.
Find the work in if it's a windy day.
Yeah.
There's no
That needs to
vegetation
be
out there?
staked.
There's no vegetation out there to protect or anything? Is it all just?
No.
There's some vegetation on the northerly side of the property, and then there's a fence and
elevated.
the sheds along the way. And there's a fence actually along this property line too, so I mean, the majority is enclosed, but we can have a silt fence.
Okay.
Yeah, if we have everything in, we can probably condition this pending final set of structural drawings and then with the other conditions that we've stated.
Okay. Anybody in the audience? Nobody in the West End's too concerned about this.
I make a motion to close.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Good luck.
Yeah. You want them all back?
Yeah.
One more.
This is a different job, right?
Nope.
This is-
No, they're all the same.
That's all.
Oh, that was the Huey, I'll give you this after.
Because I wanted the Huey stuff back.
All right. We've got it all right here.
Okay.
All right. So, not to keep you folks here any longer, thanks for coming in tonight. I think we'll have a little discussion about our trails and parking piece. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see the photos I sent there. I'm gonna put it right on the table.
Okay.
Oh, but face us.
That's cute.
Jeff, you gonna sit in on this for a minute?
Okay.
Thinking you showed it to me, but they haven't seen it.
Yeah, this is the prototype.
That's exactly.
You wanna sit any closer to the table?
I do, I just came up,
Yeah.
must be global warming.
Jeff, come on.
I haven't had it 50 years ago.
So this is the insert that would go in here. So that's the real size, but that's a real model prototype for the.
Have you guys met Jeff Hassett that's with Morse Engineering that's been doing Jeff's been doing the design and the oversight for this project, so he's been in and out of Crosby a bunch of times.
Doing the survey and the parking lot plans, yeah.
My only concern.
Let's
That's
Wait a
not
minute.
what we're gonna use, it's just the size.
Okay.
It's not what we're gonna show, it's just
So-
for sizing purposes.
So what we wanted to do is just, we're supposed to have a fairly light meeting this evening,
Yeah, didn't work.
so,
Now it's late.
yeah. So we were hopeful maybe to just, if you got had a few minutes, we'd just sort of let you know where we're at, you can tell us where you're at, and we'll go forward from here. So Amy's been out with folks from Norwell because we have a combined project and had some discussion, and they were willing to share some of this, so just figured we'd kind of get it out there for a few minutes. So, I don't know where we want to, maybe you just, yeah. All right, Penny, what do you want to start with?
Well, I'd like to start with the kiosk.
Let's do that.
Great.
Go ahead.
Howard wants to start with the kiosk too. Right, Howard?
So maybe.
Penny, if you want it, I want it.
There you go.
So should we tell you how it happened?
Sure.
How this happened? So when the bids came in and they were way too high, and you guys removed the kiosks from the subsequent bid, I started thinking that, what else could we do? So I was thinking that VOTEC could help us, knowing that they've helped other communities. So through Frank, gave me the name of the contact person at Votech, so I emailed him, and on the website, it said for construction projects, it's 2 years out. Well, imagine my surprise when all of a sudden Jen helped out and Frank helped out and
Why would you be surprised at that?
No, I wasn't surprised at their help because you guys are fabulous.
No snacks
But
for you.
all of a sudden, it's now, and I am thrilled and thank you.
Well, I should have thought of them a long time ago, seeing that that was my alarm. But they're great folks, and this is a perfect project for them because it's something they can build undercover. And it gives them sort of a little bit, touches on a whole bunch of different framing aspects, so it's kind of a good.
They built that Carl Pipes kiosk that we have on the tree there.
Yep. No, believe me, I'm like, when Marla said, why don't we go to Tech, I'm like, yeah.
Why use them for the community garden?
Right.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? Is this the prototype, what it's gonna be?
I think so.
Yeah, well, can I speak, please?
You have already had the floor twice.
Oh, here we go.
You only get it one more
No,
time.
at first, I was thinking, if you have the signage and stuff, but we need a place for notices. Could we do that on the back? Just tack notices up when there's something going to happen?
So Penny, I agree with you that is the size
Yeah.
of the insert.
Yeah.
But I was talking with Amy about it, and I would like to see it be in different sections and not one big piece, so that things could be changed out.
Well,
So-
that's
so
what I'm saying.
if we had
It's something you want to put in there.
Yes, so if we had a map, and then we had rules, I think we do need rules posted, and
Yeah.
then we had narrative and maybe a space for announcements. So
Yeah,
it
just
should be,
something that-
separate things instead of just one printed
Sure.
thing that we can't really change except expensively.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've had a good, I think this, if we kind of flip this to the working group that you've done with getting the trail markers and all the other things, I think that would be helpful and give some thought to that. I think Amy had some thought when she came back with it that might sort of rearrange some of the pieces in it. And no, we'd be happy to hear back on that. I think that would be great.
Right, but for materials purposes, I think this is a good, model to strive for as far as a prototype. So it is a true small version of the bigger one, and so the insert, which now is facing the wrong way, the commission can see it, but so the insert is this piece would be that size, and it can be whatever you want it to be. But the one thing I like about that board is it is water resistant, and so it's
So you
made
don't have
of
to have glass or
5
anything.
mass signs. It's of special material. It's printed. I don't know. In Hanover, they had plexiglass over theirs and with paper insert, and those mold and get water damage.
They don't last.
You know what I mean? So
They get fuzzy.
I think this is a preferable. This was a reject by Norwell. It wasn't mounted correctly, so that's why it's not out on their site, is because you can see the drill holes. So when it actually is installed, there are not drill holes in it. It gets just, I don't know how it goes in.
But I think, you've worked hard on the maps and you have a lot of that information. You can transfer that information, see how it fits on this, maybe reconfigure it like you have the maps. And you folks have put a lot of time and effort into kind of making those fairly concise. So I think that would be great.
Ernie Foster, who works on our committee, owns a printing company, and he can print on anything. So we can have, the idea of having the individual spots is what I've seen other places, and I would like to see here too. And he can make them out of material that is solid.
Okay, that's good. Great. No, I think that's a good plus. Great start.
Is this something we're gonna do on all the trails?
So these will be at the parking areas.
Right.
How many do we?
7, we have 7 trails.
So there'll be
yes.
7 kiosks.
So, because this isn't a complaint, it's a story.
This is the positive.
No.
Go ahead.
It's a real question, because a few weeks ago, my wife and I are because I've been telling her about the trails, and she's all excited, and she's like, when are you gonna take me on a trail? We got all excited, we're gonna go out on a trail hike. We tried to go to Bates Lake, because I remember I thought you were saying that was really good, and then Penny's got there's the Scott memorial trail that we were trying to find, like all that kind of stuff.
Pipes.
And
Pipes, my
pipes,
husband.
right. Right. Your middle name is Scott. Yeah.
No,
But
my maiden name.
maiden name is Scott, right. Anyways, I butchered that, so.
That's all right.
But the point was,
Yes.
we ended up giving up. So I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong. So we went down Clap Road, and then I saw one sign that said, you know, about the park, right? And then I couldn't find a parking space. It looked like off to the left there was some places, but it also looked like that was on private property because there was a walking path to a house. So I drove up Bates Lane. It's all private property on both sides. I couldn't find a place to park that made me feel comfortable.
That's with parking.
But yes, you're right
That's
about
on your
everything.
private
Because
property?
well, there isn't, until we build this parking area, there is not a good place on Bates Lane to park. That's the problem.
And are we gonna put it on Bates Lane, the parking
We are.
area?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. So, well, I mean, I just thought, like,
If, you know what, when you.
I
when you go
tried to
in-
use
When you go
GPS.
into the office, right, there's a guy in there that knows all about those things, and he could show you.
It's a great trail, I know what you mean. You go down there and there's one spot where I pull off.
There's actually
You
enough
have-
for two
You barely
cars.
leave enough room for a car to go by, so I'm always
I was,
kinda worried about it.
I felt nervous doing that because it looked like somebody's gonna come out. And
We
give me
haven't
mad.
encouraged that, we've actually discouraged. Right now, most people, we say the best place to do is park at Mount Hope and follow the trails in from there.
But soon we'll be parking
GPS took me there, and then I ended up in Wampatuck. If you drive far enough, you're in Wampatuck.
Oh, Lord. You probably should just use the driftway and stay over there, Doug.
You were very well.
And I'm just saying, it's just a story, but my
Yeah.
Siri
Doug's point.
couldn't find it.
To Doug's point, we have 3 maps currently on the conservation website, and the Bates Lane and Higgins McAllister are currently not there because we put on the maps the proposed parking, which is not there. So we asked our designer to remove those parking signs and put one at Mount Hope. So I'm hoping that the commission will approve Jen to put both Bates Lane and Higgins McAllister on the website so that people who access it will then be able to know where to go and where to park.
Okay, but the only parking for right
At
now.
Mount Hope.
Would be at Mount Hope.
At Mount Hope.
Well, I don't feel all that bad for not finding.
No.
So I just thought of something. Is it possible, I know you've asked for 7 kiosks, is it possible to have 8? And could there be 2 kiosks at the Bates property?
One at each end.
By the entrance, because there is a sign near your house, Howard, right?
Oh,
Is
yeah,
it-
right.
Could there be a kiosk there?
Well, there is a kiosk.
But it doesn't have the maps. I mean, a real kiosk like that.
It is.
It is a
Oh,
real
there is.
kiosk. Yes,
Is
nice.
it possible to put our maps with information on that
Yeah,
kiosk?
it's all spotted notices, so.
Okay, okay. Because it would help, I think, if we've got parking at Mount Hope and at, that we have 2 kiosks. Okay, but if it's already done.
That was an Eagle Scout project, and it's a very nice kiosk.
Okay. well,
And
I
it's
believe
good size.
I believe there will be a sign at the end of Bates Lane saying Bates Lane Trail Network.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there needs to be better signage at where it says Carl Pipes Trail.
But again, the problem is until we have a place to park, we don't want to be sending a bunch of people up there and
Right.
blocking the Reynolds driveway or things
Well, they
like
get
that. And that's the hang up.
So our other question then is, what is the status of that particular proposal?
So where we are with the trails and access is, we decided to separate the turtle sweep from the main contract of building the access because it was complicating that some contractors didn't want to bid on it and get involved in that piece of it. The other part was that we had to put this back out to bid because initially we came in over budget, so we had to rebid the project. Jeff and Paul Scott have been working hard to get those contracts and stuff together. But the turtle sweep has to be done during a certain period in the year, time period. So we took it out and Jeff's been following up with that, and we got a contractor to put in the fencing, which is going in right now. So then the sweep can take place, and then that's done, and then that gives us a longer time period to allow the contractor to work. So we're hoping between removing the turtle sweep from the contract, plus giving contractors a project that they could run through the winter, would be enticing to get more people to bid on it. So what do we, it's going in the register in another week or so?
Yeah, they're going to send it to the register tomorrow, and I think it runs next week.
For the projects to go back out to bid, and then we're having a pre-bid thing on the 23rd up at Mount Hope, and then when are the bids gonna be due by?
November 6th, I believe.
Something like that.
7th, maybe.
Yeah. So hopefully, that'll really pave the way to get these things going by springtime, so. Right? Yeah, and then we did separate the new bid out a little bit, so we have a couple of the areas as added alternates, so that if we do come in over budget, we can put our focus on Crosby and Bates Lane, and then the other two projects will come up, we'll see what we have left over for funds, and maybe modify the parking. It may be, we'll have the A game on for Crosby and Bates Lane, and maybe a B or C for the others if it's over budget. But at any rate, there'll be access and whatnot at all those locations, just no matter how we logistically do it. Really in hopes that that piece comes together, because these folks have been doing a great job of getting all the maps are ready to go, the trails are built, and
just get
Excuse me.
yeah.
Well, if you could follow directions.
I tried.
No,
But-
you were so close.
But we're pretty excited about that. Were any of you here at the start of the meeting when the Waterways folks were here?
I think Marilla walked in right after that.
Signage came up then,
So
too.
we had an informal discussion with the Waterways folks at the start of the meeting, because they've got interest in the Driftway Park in terms of use for the boating access. But what we'd like to do is turn around, once we get this project squared away, is circle back to the Driftway Park and try to make that more improved. It's, these trails that go off through the woods are pretty quiet or whatever. The Driftway is a much busier property, and so we're gonna be looking to maybe up our game with how that's used and maintained and whatever. So it's a kind of an ongoing piece. Do we have a kiosk plan when we're talking about the number of kiosks? Do we have one planned for Hubble?
Well, we have 7 trails, Hubble's one of those,
So-
so
Yes.
is there already a kiosk at the
No,
Driftway?
no. At the Driftway,
No, at Driftway, is there one at the Driftway? Do we
No.
need to there's not one.
No, there isn't.
No.
There should
I'm
be.
pretty sure there isn't a
yeah,
kiosk.
so
No,
we
there
may
isn't.
want to look at, that's a good point, we may want to look at the number of kiosks to make sure we have,
Do that.
yeah,
We'll take a drive.
okay. And at Hubble, we're just going to put one at one end on the Indian Trail end. Okay.
Could I just, out of curiosity, what kind of a price tag is this, the kiosk, each kiosk?
I don't know, I don't,
I found out an answer to that.
Did you?
I mean, it's hard to believe, honestly, but Norwell was reporting about $100 per kiosk to
No.
construct
Please,
for materials.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do we pay them labor? Or we
it's a
just?
school project, we can,
Oh, hell.
I know, it's in the Hallelujah.
No, you have, no. Oh,
So I would not say that's, the sign is included in that cost.
No,
But
but
that's
even-
separate,
please.
but just for the wood.
but that was
And then
probably
there's the
materials a couple years
installation
ago, it's
piece of
probably
it.
now 150.
We have, I
Oh,
think
we
we have
need to-
mapping kiosk money in the mapping
Yeah,
project.
and I sent, Jen, I
Yeah.
sent you the budget that we have, what we have spent so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
We should talk about the installation of the kiosk too, and, because we want them to be permanent installations,
Right.
correct? So,
well, can we throw
they
that?
have Eagle Scouts that are looking for projects, but I'm not sure that digging 2 sonotubes is an Eagle project.
Yeah,
You know?
And, you know, I just, kicking of construction, so I looked at one in Marshfield at the beginning of the new, whether it's called the South River Canoe Launch, was by CBS.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a it's the same prototype as that. It's more recent. I liked it because, well, first of all, I like the layout of the map and how it organized the, to me, that's too much text. I think it's great if you can break it down into boxes like we've been discussing. But also, they put a material, not a material, but some kind of a coating on the wood, and it looks like it's holding better than the ones in Norwell. The ones in Norwell are starting to fade, and I don't know. I know the guy who built the one in Marshfield, and I could ask him what they're using.
Sure.
Because it looks a lot nicer.
No, it's a good.
Oh, and also the construction, one has, it was put into cement, or either it was cement fortified,
Yeah.
and then the other one was just put into the dirt, and then it had blocks put around it. So I don't know the.
I saw that picture, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why one would be preferred to the other, you know.
I think maybe a little bit of concrete or something in these, just so that they aren't moved or whatever.
Tell you my experience with the power company, we're putting in street lighting poles. They put them in cement first, and then stopped doing that because they heave as a bunch. It frost heaves more than if you compact it. And just put them in compact stone around them. So that was an experience.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense.
So have we given VOTEC the go-ahead? We haven't. We haven't given them a number.
I don't think so. We gotta finalize that, but.
But it's heading in the right direction. So we thought we would build excitement and just kind of use this down meeting as time to like have a feel-good moment. So,
This is your happy time.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
Wet blanket now.
All right.
So, that's where we're at with those pieces. You can see where you're at, and
And we're kind of just twiddling thumbs, waiting for parking to be put in. So.
Well, you're gonna have to keep to it.
I know, and what happens is
no, we're gonna,
we can't.
hopefully we'll have it a little bit
Oh.
further along, but it's
You have
it's
no
good to see the
idea.
turtle piece going in and all that, so I think we're.
It's all good.
Yeah. Anything else on this piece?
No.
We're good?
Okay.
So thanks so much.
Thanks for
Sorry,
coming in.
Hope you didn't have to wait too long.
I did see Rich quit.
Richard heard enough. He decided that was.
Oh, this is what Norwell uses for their
On the trails.
on the trails.
At each location or at the start of a trail or?
No, it
Just like the way.
along the way, they actually have it broken into quadrants. So if you've got the map and you can see there's numbers on the trails or whatever, apparently there's like a sign that says like 1-4. Have you passed the 1-4? And then they say there's an emergency call. They can better locate you. But those are just along the trail.
Because we have
We have
colors.
we have a different system. We have squares, we color code every trail, and we have junction numbers.
Well, good.
In fact,
Great.
I met with Officer Keefe, he stumbled into each other, and
No, that was great.
he was glad to see that we did.
Yeah, that's important.
I've noticing they've
Yeah.
taken the junction numbers off at Whitney Fair Woods, which a lot of us are, especially the maintenance people, trying to wonder what that decision was. But no, it's good to have junction numbers as reference, both for maintenance people and for emergencies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it'd be nice if we could have one made like that for the Scituate logo and put up just at the junction numbers or something like that. Just, it's kind
Let's
of
not
nice
get
to know
too
that it's
many things
a little
out there.
advertisement that town conservation is.
But
Right.
speaking of signage, I feel like there's lots of different signs. We have the sign that the EDC has developed to brand the town, and then we adjusted it to add the upland in addition to the waterfront.
On the logo.
On a logo. So I'm thinking that I'd like to have a sign designed maybe by NC or approved so that we have a uniform signage for the trails so that on the roadway, people know exactly where the trails are, so that way they don't get lost or can't find it.
Jeff, we have, on the plan that we have now, maybe before, I think we have that on our plan to have a sign at the end of the road.
Oh, at the end of Bates Lane?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Do we do the same thing at Higgins?
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah.
So, so to Marla's point, the actual printing that goes on that sign, we might want to think about a little bit.
And the design of the sign, you know, to include the logo that you guys approved and.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't it just be just like the Ellis one?
Well, we're not.
We're
we think that's
debating
a
about
little,
that.
You know, just, I mean, we could
Do you-
be like the Ellis one, but it might be interesting to have it be more like the Historical Society ones that have a little flair.
Do you remember what we put on that?
Yeah, so the contractor has to provide that sign. It simply says Bates Lane Trail Network, Higgins McAllister Trail Network
Yeah.
on
Very
a simple
basic.
aluminum sign.
Who's the contractor?
We
We
don't,
don't know
They
yet.
haven't
It's-
Oh, you mean whoever puts in the
Whoever.
parking? Okay. Well, can't we tell them what goes on? We can go.
We can probably coordinate that with them when the time comes.
Okay.
Might be a little extra.
Yeah.
I mean, we can just give them an offer, a suggestion for design.
well,
I think in this time, as putting it out to bid, they have to bid on kind of a simple sign. But
yeah, we can talk about
we can talk
changing it.
about when that comes.
Poor Jeff's changed up this contract so many times, I don't think he wants to. Okay. But I think that's a good point, Marla. We'll see how we can
Have a uniform
add that to
signage.
that. Yep,
That would coordinate with what the town is already
Yeah.
using.
Sure.
That's the
Be
issue.
nice.
okay. No concrete, better signs. Thanks for your,
Right.
thanks a lot.
I was say hello to Nancy for me, please.
Don't lose hope. This is coming together.
I have to ask you though, what is a turtle sweep? How does that work? Because I was looking up turtles tonight for a different reason, how many are in this area. and
So it's the
forth.
eastern box turtle is in that area. When we do a project that's in the possible habitat for these turtles, we have to notify National Heritage, and the engineer develops a program, or their environmental consultant develops a plan. And what they're doing right now is they're putting silt fence around the perimeter of the project. Once that fence, and the person that does that has to be aware of looking out for turtles or habitat like that. Once that fence is in place, the environmental consultant will go out there with a few people, and they'll literally sweep that area, walk it, looking for any turtles that might be in there. If they're there, then they have to notify National Heritage. Typically, they put them outside the enclosure so that they're not harmed by the construction.
And the fence is buried, Howard, so the turtles.
I saw, I walked it today.
Yeah, once you get the turtle on the outside, they can't come back in where the construction, it's just in the construction area where National Heritage thinks there might be turtles.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you,
It's primarily the box turtles that they
That's
found.
the,
I mean, as a kid, we found turtles all the time. I
Yeah.
walk a lot in the woods and around, I don't see
no,
turtles.
we don't see too much anymore.
No, we walked on top of Carolina Hill a few years ago, and Nancy and I, there was a box turtle there. It was in the summer, and it's sandy up there, and so it was up.
so it's habitat for that, which.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I just don't see them, so.
Well, it's just strange how they'll wind up at different places. But
Right.
once they're in an area, that the construction's proposed in an area where there's potential habitat, then that's the procedure that we have to follow. And in a way, it gets the project sort of staked out. So,
All right.
all right?
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
So for other, we talked about that and then other projects. Go ahead.
Brad did get the go-ahead for the suite,
Oh, good.
so it will be happening very soon.
Okay.
As soon as the fence is done,
Yep.
that's what Jeff told me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that piece is going, I think I sent everybody a few pictures of what they're doing with that. So Amy and I were just talking about other items coming up and moving forward. This is our big one, and we've sort of been holding back, trying to get this project done. And we really hope that the strategy we have now, between removing this turtle piece from the contract and getting the contractors more time and the right time to do this job, will get this out to bid and get going. It's gonna be a lot, when this moves forward, it's gonna be a long winter of being busy with that sort of thing. But beyond that, there's a few other things that we need to start to think about as a commission. The Driftway Park has been brought up a couple times tonight, and I really think we have to turn our efforts back to that park. All these things are within our care and custody, and we have to be responsible and take care of them. Trying to get a couple of contractors out to look at the platform that's at the end, because that's deteriorating some. And the parking would be sort of too immediate, or there's three immediate things, I think, for the Driftway Park. There's the platform.
Yeah.
We need to fix a few of the trails, because there is a big loop that's accessible, like a disabilities trail. And there's a few places that's kind of muddy, and it would be hard to use. And it wouldn't take a lot to get that piece repaired. And then we could work on the parking lot, which is relatively simple. Striping and signs and stuff, I think we can come up with something.
I wish we could enlarge that parking.
Well, so that's the bigger piece that, I'd really like to get this other piece done, the access and trails that we're working on now.
Definitely.
But probably, at least, do you recall when it's probably gotta be 10 years ago, we hired Horsley Witten to do a fairly comprehensive study of the Driftway Park, and we have that somewhere.
It's gotta be. I don't know if it's in the
Yeah,
file
no,
cabinet or downstairs.
Yeah, they've got it.
But it was definitely there.
Yeah, no, it's on the file cabinet. We
So,
got it, yeah.
so what we need to do is take a look at that. I mean, it was pretty elaborate, and there may be things that we don't think we care about or have changed, but making sure we have enough parking, making sure it's well maintained, making sure it's what folks in Scituate want to use is something that I think we have to put some time and effort into, and sort of rejuvenate that park. And to me, once we finish this piece, that would be something that
Should
we
be a
really need to
priority.
do. The other thing is that we got money from Toll Brothers as part of the mitigation for that project to start to think about improving the Scituate Brook.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we need to start to
It
think
was a
about.
big deal when we permitted that.
That whether it's an inventory or, I'm not even quite sure the best method to start that, but we want to figure out what we need to do.
Mark wanted a shot at doing that.
Yeah. So we need to get to thinking about how we want to deal with that. We have the funds for that, and
How much was it, Frank?
it was 30 grand or something, which doesn't go very far, but the idea would be
It's a start.
And then I was chatting with Kyle Boyd for a few minutes, and Kyle is our resource officer.
Right.
And his previous work was a lot of grant writing. So whether it's the stream, Scituate Brook, or maybe some of these areas like Crosby, that we can now start to think about some projects like some habitat enhancement,
Right.
emerging growth.
Right.
And Kyle's more than happy to give us some help in doing some of that grant work. So
That'd be great.
I think in both those cases, we could wind up with a win. Right?
Yes.
So the other thing is just dealing with some of the ongoing enforcement issues and whatnot, and how do we want to find, it's a matter of allocating time for all these different pieces. So which ones and how do we want to best address that?
Who's being real, do we have somebody that's being real bad, or just?
Well, we just have a lot of ongoing,
Oh, you have to have a laundry list of people.
Well, we have a pretty long laundry list from when Patrick was
Yes.
here, and he was tasked with trying to get some of those difficult cases launched and moving forward. So a lot of those have kind of gone into stalemate,
Okay.
or they've progressed into a solution one way or another. And then, of course, we have ones that come along every day, like today. You know what I mean? Today was another new enforcement case. Last week there was another new enforcement case. And so it's like, I mean, the ones that come up, I think you can't turn a blind eye when you have a project that's before you, but now you all of a sudden are uncovering stuff that they've been doing, you know what I mean, recently. So it's managing those ones too. So it's definitely staff driven as far as like trying to move them along. You know what I mean? It's at a point in time they get to a place where it involves legal counsel. So now you're talking about spending
Money.
the town's resources in order to pursue, you know, resolving some of these difficult enforcement cases. So I guess it's, I'd like to talk about prioritizing, you know, which ones really can we let go at this point, or do we want to try to renew, you know, going after because they really meant a lot to you a couple years ago. You know what I mean? Like we've got one on Gardner Road I can think of that was one that eventually that'll come back to us, potentially with a project, yet there's unresolved enforcement issues. You know, certainly you've got a number of different coastal ones, from unpermitted docks and walls and everything you could think of on the beach areas. You know, there's lots of things we can go towards, but
Right.
again, it comes down to, you know, where we are definitely fighting a pretty constant paper stream of new projects and just trying to get things done with Jen and myself. So I don't know. And I appreciate the fact that you all are so committed to this commission and you know, with your time to the meetings and also reviewing the projects and site visits and getting out there. But I don't really think that it's necessarily a volunteer situation where I could put, you know, somebody who's not town staff to try to tackle an enforcement case. I think it's pretty much legal. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So amongst ourselves, we need to come up with a strategy, is I guess what I'm saying.
Any thoughts on that?
Do you have a current list of the enforcements that you'd like to address?
I have a really long list, but I mean, current ones, I mean, I'm just rattling off some of the current ones. Right now, I'm dealing with today, you know what I mean? Like present time issues, the long-standing ones, we have a list in the office, but I think it's like 40 long, you know what I mean? So it's not reasonable.
40?
Something like that, yeah. And it's Lisa, it's probably the list that you and Pat worked on a couple years ago. So I mean, it's not
You could probably add 10 more on.
really realistic that we're gonna go back in time 5 and 7 years and, you know what I mean, with the
There
staff
are a
that we
few that
have.
we do need to, when they're ready to come back this way.
Yeah,
Like you said, Gardner, that is not something I'm willing to let go.
well, and I think that's definitely an angle, is like, we know, and by like sending them out a notice of violation and an enforcement letter or whatever, even if maybe there isn't a resolution on certain ones, is the minute that they file for either a certificate of compliance or a new notice of intent, at least you've got that red folder to identify that there were outstanding issues that were unresolved. Like I know that there's a number on Central Ave that are fit in that category, and you know, and they come around, you know what I mean? Meaning like these people, they come back, you know, and it's not, they're not gone forever. They'll either sell their property or they'll want to do an addition or something like that. But I don't know, it's definitely frustrating, the amount of unpermitted work that just happens. Like we're having a real challenge right now with that. I guess I'll say that. You know, like for instance, there was a, you know, permits issued on a project which should have come before you.
Before they
got a
somewhere
permit.
else.
Yeah, and so, you know, and it's the, you know, the regulations in the law is clear that just because you receive a permit in one office doesn't relieve you of the obligation to get all the other permits required under the law. You know what I mean? So just because you might have a zoning permit or a building or whatever, any permit, it doesn't just, you're within the jurisdictional area to wetlands, you need to permit through us.
Yeah.
End of story, so.
Do you somewhat informally, I guess, categorize these in levels of severity of
Yes.
violation?
Yes.
So that might be one way to sort of classify which ones are worth spending more time on.
Yeah, well, and
It's tough though, you know, with some of these.
Gotta be
like,
consistent, and that's-
Well, the permitting one, you know, there's a sign-off sheet that goes around. When someone wants to build something, whatever, they come in, they make application, and then the building inspector or whoever's issuing the permits looks at it, and says, well, all right, you know, he looks at a map, he looks at a couple of things, does it trigger conservation, Board of Health, whatever. You know, unfortunately, not everybody is really forthcoming with all their information, or they kind of skirt it in some way to, so it's not always a.
It's not always.
Well, I mean, just like
And
anecdotal.
just the magnitude of the stuff that's going on, there's just so many that sooner or later.
Well, because like for my deck, I got the building permit given to me before my hearing, which really surprised me because there's a sign-off sheet on all those. And if I was anyone else not knowing that, I would have thought that was permission to start work.
Right.
And I couldn't blame somebody that would have thought that. So you get the big red thing that says, put this in your window, and you got a building permit, and you go start. And I can't, those kind of things, I can't, it's hard to fault.
That's
'Cause
true.
That seems almost, that was an internal hiccup, I shouldn't have got that permit so quick. But.
I think it happens a lot.
It's too bad
Maybe
there
it's
isn't a
always like
form
Because
that
then there's a
says you
separate
have
one
to
for the
check
DEP.
this.
No, there is a form.
Yeah.
There is a
There
form.
there is a
This is
form, and
before you
and
start
it
working
happens,
with
there's also
conservation?
transitions within the departments that make things more, it's not, you know, perfect world. You know, that lady got on a plane the other day without a ticket.
That was
If anybody
weird.
saw that.
How's that possible?
Well, she said she threw it away once she got on the
She
plane.
literally went into the airport with TSA and all the things to check. A woman wound up sitting on an airplane without a single piece of paper.
Wow.
It's amazing.
So, I
That's
mean,
frightening.
stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then we just have to do our best
Well, if you,
to take a look and see. And sometimes, you know, like in your case or whatever, if we find that something slipped through the cracks, if there's something that the people can do, you know, if there was supposed to be some mitigation or whatever, hopefully you can work with them and sort that out. And then there's gonna be the people that intentionally, you know, do their best to avoid some of that. And, you know, good for Amy, she's out there with the more critical ones. You know, she found a fairly major one the other day on something that I'm sure people would have hoped that just got overlooked.
if you were to take the list of 40 or 60 or whatever it is and slice off the most egregious, meaning the ones that would actually affect the environment the most, not the ones that just, you know, are annoying. But like the ones that like, hey, we got a real concern here because you could be, you know, polluting like a stream and everything else. How big would that list be?
You would pare it down. Yeah.
Because I guess, but to
Not
me, the
sure how big
top
it is.
priorities should always be the ones that there's a potential risk to the environment
Or town resources.
or town resources.
Mhm.
But,
Well,
well,
and
and
then that brings up
abutters and things like that, but that's part of
Right.
that's part of the environment.
We've
but-
got.
Right.
Yeah.
In a pear tree.
Yeah, encroachments are another, like, so there's a violations of just, you know, like permitting process and administrative rules, and you're right, and are you actually filling, altering, like Wetlands Protection Act, that type of stuff. I mean, I think that those ones are pretty well under control. You know what I mean? I think it's the ongoing violations of probably unpermitted work and, yeah, which remain unresolved on a lot of cases.
Yeah, I was thinking, just the other day, I was wondering what, as we planted some new trees around our property, and I was wondering about the guy who cleared the buffer zone, and I don't know if it was a after-the-fact filing, or if that was an enforcement order and everything, but whatever happened with that, you know?
Right,
So
right.
That's probably on that list,
That's
those
on
kind
that
of
list,
things,
or
yeah.
like the guy with the shed that keeps popping up, you know what I mean? At some point, that's gonna have to turn into an actual enforcement order with like a cease and desist, you know what I mean? Encroachments fall into that same, it's their, you know, same category of, you know, it's a violation of town-owned property when you've got people out there that live next to conservation or other town-owned land and use it as it's their own. You know, I mean, so that's a huge problem, and we actually have trying to form a strategy with the town administrator on how to address those cases. Because again, those end up going legal, you know what I mean? And not all of that property is conservation land, it's just maybe other town land, could be owned by or managed by the selectmen, or, you know.
It's a vicious circle.
It is, all while we have 2 of our 40Bs that are going to construction this month, like this week.
Which one? Stop Green.
Herringbrook Meadow are both gearing up, like they're starting.
You know, it's funny, because I saw when I went by Herringbrook, it looked like it had been mowed.
Right, well, because they are, part of the first step is they are getting rid of the Phragmites in the isolated area.
Yeah.
And it's part of the plan, but I mean, you know, they're checking the boxes. We've got our review engineer on board, similar to Toll Brothers. They've got, the state is on board because they're superseding water. And the town is also involved. But there's a lot going on. And we've got Fourth Cliff is going on. So we've got the
that's
presentation
egregious.
that Scott gave in July of 2018, if you guys remember this bad boy. So they had like 6 different projects that they were gonna start to do. One of them was just put signage, like danger, the cliff is falling.
The cliff's falling.
Yeah, and so we gave them a minor activities permit because that was kind of a public safety type of a matter. But anyways, they've got assigned to every other project that it's a minor activities permit too. I was talking to Frank about this. I don't think so. I mean, so these are coming in, and I mean, maybe some of them are minor permits, but mostly they're gonna be RDAs and with an NOI. Like one of them, they wanna build a brand new pavilion. That's on a coastal bank. Like that's not an
The Air Force wants to build a new
Yeah.
pavilion out there?
They do, yeah.
When did
Before
you
they
get
even
that
protect the
paperwork?
goddamn cliff?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, that's
so
number
it can
7,
fall
so
into the
that's-
ocean.
Because
on the wish
their
list,
claim
though.
to fame is they can get approval to have things repaired on top, whereas it's the red tape to get the armoring money.
We don't want to stay here anymore tonight and discuss this.
Okay, well, we have a couple other things that we need to do. One is you need to just vote the orders
Yep.
on the list.
Yes.
And we've got a couple of certificates of compliance that we're gonna issue tonight. And also, we're gonna vote on the 2020 meeting schedule, potentially. I mean, we can vote the version that we have, and if we need to modify it, we can modify it later in the year.
Did we get a cut? Did you send that out?
No.
No, I didn't see it.
No, but next year, no.
2020?
It's Monday nights,
1st and 3rd, except
Well,
for there's holidays, then we get.
except where there's holidays.
You get messed up, and then I get messed up.
Do you guys wanna go through each date? I mean,
Not
or do
tonight.
you wanna just?
Just send it out.
Just
Just
send it
send it
out.
out, we'll vote on it next meeting.
And we'll go.
Yeah, I mean, with a 7-member board, we don't often have a quorum issue. You know what I mean? But it would be helpful.
I like to
know
keep
if
it
you
simple.
guys-
1st and 3rd.
3, 4.
As much as possible.
But that's always happened with
Like
the
Labor Day is the
holidays.
first Monday of September every
Yeah, like-
year.
All right, we'll
Next
cross that
September's
bridge with
funky,
a couple of them.
we're actually, yeah,
next Monday.
Homes Day's next Monday,
That's
but,
not too much.
yeah, next September is a little bit funky, we're only meeting once next September. And it's like the third week, but we're meeting the last day
Next
of
September.
September.
Can't wait.
I know.
Isn't it October?
All right.
Whatever.
All right, yeah, just send it out to us.
Send it out and then we'll vote on it. All right.
Yeah,
Okay, I make a motion, we accept the orders of conditions as fall for 25 Rebecca Road as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 23 Bradford Ave. as
Second.
written.
All in favor?
Aye. 36 Bailey's Causeway is written.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye. Excuse me.
were there
36,
any nays on that?
No.
no, 36R Bailey's Causeway.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think there's an abstain.
Yeah, I'm abstaining on that
Yeah.
one.
There's one abstain.
On both of them,
Yeah.
or?
Which one?
I would.
36 Bailey.
Yeah.
I'll be a no on 36R.
36R.
A nay. Nay.
Okay, so the certificate of compliance, so you're gonna do both of those, maybe they okay?
Yes.
77 Lighthouse and 12 Concord, which is over in.
It's good.
So that looks good.
Did
I
you
also
get
have budgets. Do you guys want to talk about budget stuff?
Not really. I'm gonna go home.
Stuff.
I mean, you've already missed this.
Okay, we'll
No, it
talk
starts
about
at
that
9.
later.
Yeah,
Okay.
you and I can look at those.
Yes.
Did we get,
It's budget stuff, is like, these are our funds where we have like little chunks of money to go towards improving our
Yep.
properties, or like the Scituate Brook, we've got 25 grand, like that type of thing. I was
Oh,
just
that's
gonna
good.
Review those numbers.
okay,
If
can't
anybody
wait.
wants the info, just.
all right.
I make a motion
I'll
to
make it.
adjourn.
I was second.
Second.
All in favor?
All right. Have a
Thank
great
you.
trip, Penny.
If I get out of here.
Okay.
The northeast.
When you leaving?
There's a northeast.
When you
Friday
leaving?
morning.
Oh, you'll be fine.